Hey, what's up, everybody? Good to be back. Good to be back. Yeah, I think I'm liking this new schedule. This is the first day of it starting officially. So I'll be definitely streaming Monday through Thursdays now, and probably most Fridays and Saturdays. So it's yeah, see, I'm on time because I'm prepared because I have a little bit of catch up time, and I also have a bunch of new videos coming out this week. I released one today that hopefully some of you saw. I got some good comments on that. Had some help from the community on that from editing. So thank you to the community member who wanted to stay behind the scenes on that one. But yeah, got a couple more coming out as well. And then I hung around for a couple extra minutes, or like a whole extra hour, I guess, on the last stream, and just hung out and chatted. I actually, that was kind of fun. I usually don't do that because I'm always so afraid of having dead air and stuff and not like speaking every moment of the stream, but that actually was pretty cool. So I'm probably going to try to do that as much as I can when what's coming out? You do? What do you mean? Oh, yeah, I put out the um like Democrats won't save us from fascism video today, and then I got another one coming out about the difference between leftists and liberals, and then I got a message to regretful Trump voters, and then I got another video about um why Iran winning the war would actually be good for Americans. So, and the video is recorded for one of them, and then the scripts are done for the other ones, and I just gotta get them recorded at some point this week. Let's see what we got here. Oh, hold on just a minute. Trump's saying that he's going to run for office in Venezuela because he's so popular there.
Just so you understand, the people of Venezuela, they say if I ran for president of Venezuela,
that shit.
I'm polling higher than anybody has ever polled in Venezuela. So after I'm finished with this, I can go to Venezuela. I will quickly learn Spanish. It won't take too long. I'm good at language. And I will go to Venezuela. I got to run for president. But we're very happy with the president-elect that we have right now. The people that are running it. If you remember Bush, and we, just so you understand, the people of Venezuela, they say if I ran for president of Venezuela.
He's not too popular anywhere, I don't think. Yeah, I know. It is so weird. Like, what is he casting something? So this was a celebration, I guess you'd call it a celebration, in Mexico City. It's their annual burning of Judas Easter ritual, a tradition blending religion, folk art, and political criticism. One effigy depicted both leaders sharing a single devil's body. Yeah, this is effigies of Trump and Netanyahu.
It's a two-headed evil. One half is Trump, the other half is Netanyahu. It now represents evil in the world, two sinister characters and unfortunately powerful.
El mal encarnado en el mundo, dos personajes.
So it's a criticism of their intention to rule the world between the two.
Desafortunadamente poderosos. Entonces, pues es una crítica a su intento de gobernar el mundo entre ellos dos.
Today, it looks like a bunch of people occupied the offices of Palantir, demanding that they cut their contracts with ICE.
You can hear them singing inside queue along the
Yeah, I didn't even know that this was happening, but apparently they ran out of handcuffs because there was too many people and then they had to go back. I'm sure that everybody is out at this point, but I am hoping that Trump, well, they called off their press conference for tomorrow. So that's a little bit scary, but he's threatening to like destroy the whole country and all sorts of crazy shit. Um a- a- yeah, so I don't know. I'm hoping he backs out. His ego is crazy though. So it would require him to concede as a loser. It's the only thing that's how he can save the world right now, but I am just catching up on the chat. I think there were a couple of other videos related to this. Definitely glad it's happening. I doubt that they'll cut their contracts with ICE over this because of the fact that they are so ideologically on board, and this is like their um this is where they make all their money, is these government contracts with these extremely messed up governments. This was another weird one. World Economic Forum people are always saying the craziest shit. But here she says that water, soil, and oxygen should not be infinitely accessible. They are assets that should be included in global economics balance sheets.
About capital, we tend to think only about financial capital, about cash, financial assets, but we know that's not the only value on which our economies depend. We know that every aspect of every part of the economy is fundamentally dependent on nature, as you highlighted. The air that we breathe, the water we drink, the soil, the oceans that we need for the food that we need to consume, the minerals that we need as inputs to technology and to infrastructure. And without these forms of value, these forms of natural capital, we won't have economies. They are the fundamental building blocks of our economies. But the ways, as you said, the ways in which we have grown our economies, our models of economic development, have been incredibly successful for global prosperity. But the unintended consequences of current models of growth are simply not sustainable on a finite planet. The amount of resource that we are drawing into our economies, Earth's resources, and the amount of pollution and waste that we're pumping out, whether that's through greenhouse gas emissions, whether that's sewage into our water, whether it's plastics into the ocean, is beyond the Earth's carrying capacity. And we know that that's leading, as you said, to very significant direct impacts for society, but very significant financial costs for the economy. You can look at that as you have and calculate.
Yeah, I mean, I have like, you know, I'm not sure exactly what the goal is. Like, are they just using that as kind of a cover story? Like, oh, the pollution is the problem, so we're going to, financialize this. Um, and it depends on how things are financialized and how things are accessed. You know what I mean? Because if they want to financialize something so it's valued and there is investment in that area, then that's fine. But if you are placing value on it so you can exclude access to it, then that is where it's a problem. And like both of those paths are a possibility, but the path that these kind of organizations always seem to take is the like monopolization, exclude access path. Um, because I've actually like worked adjacently to the carbon credit space in the past, and a lot of this stuff is kind of similar, like where they try to, you know, they'll fund, they'll get corporations to fund tree planting efforts in various parts of the planet, and they'll get good PR from that, and they'll get credits that are financialized. So that like when it's like a voluntary setup like that is not bad. But with World Economic Forum, I definitely am skeptical of their motives.
That at a macro level. But the way that that's showing up as we're breaching these boundaries and breaching these limits and undermining nature is showing up in very practical ways that are showing up for financial risk for institutions. Lack of water is leading to disruption of operations of supply chains where water is needed as an essential input for manufacturing or power production. The degradation of soil is leading to reduced agricultural yields. The decline of pollinator species is also having an impact on agriculture. So that's leading to direct financial risks for organizations, for businesses, and ultimately for investors. And as you said, ultimately the reason for this is at the moment, the way that decisions are made on an everyday level within businesses and financial institutions is because we're looking only at financial data, financial metrics that are not factoring in nature. Nature is treated within.
Yeah, that part I do agree with. I do think that there needs to be additional things aside from GDP that we measure the economy on, because you know um just it's very reductionist, GDP, because it doesn't even measure the totality of wealth in a society. It just gives an average, which can be ballooned by just a few very very rich people. And that's the thing we have here in the U.S., where you have a very small class of people that makes the GDP very high, and then you have the rest of society that is broke, but they are a part of this wealthy society because they happen to live somewhere near those rich people.
The economy as though it's unlimited and predominantly as though it's free. And the risks and harms are simply not costed in financial terms. We can cost them at a macro level. They're not costed into day-to-day decision-making. And the result is, as a consequence, we've put all of our economies at fundamental risk. We can't do business on a dead planet. If we're going to protect natural systems, one of the solutions is to bring nature onto the balance sheet, to bring nature into the ways that decisions are made within business, to allocate a value.
Yeah, like, or we could penalize the businesses that destroy nature. Like, that's the other thing that's weird, is like that is this a cop out? Like, or is this like a path beyond that, or like around that potential liabilities and stuff? I'm just always looking for the ulterior motives with these people. Let's see what we got here. This was another pretty big story out today. This law firm was hacked. Oh, I'm going to need a paywall thing. This law firm was hacked, and it's Trump's law firm. And they announced that information related to 10 of their clients was somehow breached and taken by these hackers. bringing up the getting through the paywall here from removepaywall.com. Oh, what's going on? Why aren't you bringing it up? I'm only getting the first paragraph here. Let me try option 3. Nope. All right, let me look this up. There has to be some new stories. Because a couple hours ago when I looked it up, it was just this Bloomberg story. Yeah, here's a Reuters one now that they don't have a paywall. Jones Day, a leading U.S. law firm, said on Monday that it suffered a data breach after hackers posted client materials online. Jones Day, which represents President Donald Trump in his 2016 and 2020 election campaigns, experienced a cyber phishing incident in which an unauthorized third party accessed a limited number of data files for 10 clients. And the thing is like, this is probably a very high level law firm that they probably have a lot of clients, but it's not like a ton of clients. So I'm thinking the chances are probably high that they got some info on Trump, because of the fact that if you're a hacker, you're going to go for the most high value targets, and that's pretty much how they're going to figure out that you're in there. A group called the Silent Ransom Group posted the data to their website on March 30th, according to the timeline events captured by ecrime.ch. Oh, I guess we'll figure out if who the information's on. The group, which claimed responsibility for the hack, could not immediately be reached for comment. The hackers claimed to have targeted Greg Castañas, who leads the Jones Day team handling cases before the U.S. Court of Appeals. According to a screenshot they posted of purported negotiations between them and 2 members of the firm's information security and technology staff. Oh, so this is the person they phished, maybe. Castellanos declined to comment. A large part of the Federal Circuit's caseload involves intellectual property matters. Silent Ransom Group has been targeting law firms since 2003. So this is an entirely different group than the one that got Kash Patel last week or 2 weeks ago. So they have over 2,000 lawyers. They're known for defending large corporations. Huh. So it doesn't say the customers. It just says the person that got phished. Jones Day said in 2021 that it was among companies affected by the hack of a file transfer program by a group known as Klopp Law Firms, which frequently possess confidential client data relating to corporate deals and litigation. A lot of hacks happening recently. Get into the major stories of the day. First, though, I saw this, and this can't be good. I mean, it doesn't look like the bridge is totally destroyed, but this is a tanker explosion in Panama City. But apparently this particular bridge is like, it's another one of these global economic choke points. So it's very strange timing for sure. Apparently an accident. Over 14,000 so the bridge sits at the Bridge of the Americas sits at the Pacific entrance to the Panama Canal, one of the most critical choke points in global trade. Over 14,000 vessels transited last year. That looks kind of sketchy. Seems kind of sketchy. As far as like that could exacerbate the situation that we're dealing with, and that would suck. And the US is already doing war crimes in Iran, and they're threatening, or Donald Trump is at least now threatening to do even worse. This is them bombing the airport in Tehran. They also bombed a couple of schools. This was a university that they bombed, and they bombed these cultural sites too. Like if you've ever seen, I'll show some video in a couple minutes, but if you've ever like chapel like buildings, I guess they're probably mosques or they're palaces, just with the insane trippy imagery on the inside. Some of those places have been destroyed, and these are all war crimes. Not that they seem to care anymore, but you know, there is a good chance that the International Criminal Court is going to have a
of lone strikes.
Donald Trump's arrest, just like this school I don't believe was on a military base, but that isn't really an excuse anyway, because there are a lot of schools on military bases in the US, and if somebody bombed a military base and took out the school nearby, I don't think that people would be making that distinction or thinking that it was a valid excuse.
On a university and a hospital in northern Tehran. Of lone strikes on a university and a hospital in northern Tehran. Iran's science ministers told Al Jazeera more than 30 universities.
They're probably going to put out warrants against Donald Trump. I would say International Criminal Court. Not that that will do anything, but I'm just it will. That's definitely another sign of the, you know, the isolation of the US, I would say, and kind of recognition as being a rogue state. The ICC should, but yeah, I mean, they bombed a bunch of other schools that weren't on army bases. So what's the excuse there, you know? And for him threatening the bridges and all that shit.
These have been targeted across the country.
Yeah, neither is Israel.
Since the conflict began 5 weeks ago, Tehran has threatened to retaliate with attacks on U.S.-affiliated schools in the region. Tokar Asadi has been to the scene of the latest strikes, and he's got this report.
And here we are in the northern areas of the Iranian capital at the campus of Shahid Beheshti University, where this laser and plasma research institute was targeted.
On Friday, a U.S.-Israeli strike hit the university in Tehran, badly damaging those facilities. It's not the first to be targeted. Earlier this week, attacks struck the Iran University of Science and Technology. Last month, one of its faculty members was killed at home, along with his 2 children. Iran's Minister of Science, Research and Technology told Al Jazeera that more than 30 universities have been targeted so far.
More than 60 university students have been martyred to date, along with several professors. This not only brings international responsibility, but will also forever tarnish humanity's memory of the aggressors. Humanity will never forget that the US, with all its claims of upholding human rights, has now targeted knowledge and scholars.
Yeah, and this historical site as well, Golistan Palace, is apparently among one of many historical sites that were taken out. Just, you know, for no other reason than just to, you know, destroy the civilization, bomb them back to the Stone Age, as he said. Look at how this place looked before. Like, this is incredible. And this is what happened to it now. I'm sure it will be rebuilt, but it's messed up. How old was this? 400 years at least? And, you know, I have never seen any kind of architecture like that around here, for sure. And it wasn't just that. Oh, wait. It wasn't just that either. There was another one that was coming up. Wow, let's look at this video real quick of this. There were a couple of other sites too that I found. It's very sad that this is like what kind of species just like destroys each other like this. It is so insane. And yeah, there is not even any kind of semblance of caring about human rights. I don't think they ever did. They didn't in Iraq. They didn't in Afghanistan. But now this is way worse. And I think we've definitely reached a kind of disturbing time in history for sure. I mean, it's not like the past 50 years of colonialism have been like anything great, you know? Let's see. It is wild too. New York Times called oh yeah, let's see if what other sites I can find. See if I could find one of the other places. Chi Sotran Palace and the 1,000-year-old Jame Mosque. Wow. Let's see what we got. Just a minute here. Yeah, so they said that shooting down the planes that were bombing civilians was an escalation. Augmenting people's anxiety are the recent escalations from Iran's leadership. On Friday, Iran shot down an American fighter jet in the southwest part of the country. Yeah, that's like quite an escalation. Very interesting way of phrasing that. The New York Times is notorious for that kind of stuff, though. And, you know, about this whole like narrative about all the protesters that were shot in Iran during this whole thing in January, there's a big story that's unraveling with this too. And it seems like there were definitely protests going on. There was probably a harsh response to them, like all governments do. But in the midst of those protests, there were groups that were armed by the US and Israel. And they were among the protesters, shooting at the cops and shooting at the protesters. And I got a list of some videos and stuff that shows some of this. And you know, a lot of government officials actually confirm this as well. And Trump kind of confirmed this to some extent today as well. So, you know, there were a couple thousand people that probably died in this. I don't know what the estimates are, but it's definitely like under 10,000, closer to 5,000 maybe. And that's still being high with the number. They say like 30,000, 45,000, which is obnoxious because, you know, the numbers that they have given for Gaza, where it was like, you know, it took them like, even if you were going by the real figures or the figures that Hamas was putting out, you have like 30,000 in a couple months, and they were carpet bombing the whole place. So if you have repressive action to a reaction to a protest, the death count is not going to stack up like 10 times faster than Gaza did. That's just crazy business. So let's hear what Trump says, and then we'll look through some of those videos that I found. Yeah, that was odd timing, Steph.
They don't
Even I didn't even do that on purpose.
have guns. You know, we sent some guns. They don't have guns. You know, we sent some guns, but the group that was supposed to give, which I said would happen to my people, I said it, I called it exactly. We sent guns.
What the hell is this music in the background? It's probably related to his Easter thing, but
It's a lot of guns. They were supposed to go to the people so they could fight back against these thugs. You know what happened? The people that they sent them to kept them because they said, what a beautiful gun, I think I'll keep it. So I'm very upset with a certain group of people, and they're going to pay a big price for that. But the Iranian people will.
So he's saying that he sent guns and the guns were kept. I don't think that's what actually happened. I think they sent the guns and the mission was not really completed.
Fight back as soon as they know they're not going to be shot, and as soon as they can get weapons.
Because, you know, they ended up getting capped, pretty much.
If they had weapons.
Let's see. So this is the footage that a lot of people were showing to say that the security forces were taking out protesters. Just indiscriminate. So there were literally shootouts on the street, but the shootouts were going both ways, and these were militias on the streets that were literally armed by the U.S. and Israel. Bro, sorry about that. The noises were driving me nuts. So yeah, somebody pointed out that these are all zoomed in. You know, it's all like quick zooms. You see them firing their guns, but then you see, you know, other people. You see a guy in the background on his phone and shit. So, and then you see those other people, like if they were able to zoom out, people are walking by kind of casually while this firefights going on. So, like, there's another video that's a lot more clear though, where you can see a security truck drive by, and then a bunch of people get out of this car and start firing on them. And it was likely these rebel militias that got armed. And even Mike Pompeo went on Twitter, the former CIA head, and he admitted that the Mossad was probably in the streets with the Iranian protesters. They just like lit and these kind of firefights were going on throughout January. There was something on Al Jazeera where they were talking about this.
If If there is any kind of majority, we should have seen them in streets, or we should have heard their voices. But what we have heard and seen almost last month, it was, in the first days, it was just totally peaceful protests. But those forces of Mossad and, some Kurdish groups have turned it in slaughtering those peaceful people in streets. But they have made a kind of a false flag. And they said that it was done by, for example, the military forces of Iran.
See, I don't doubt that any government is cruel with protesters that, rise up in the streets. The nature of government is to protect the racket, so they're definitely going to do that. But the level of brutality that's being described, it's like, it's atrocity propaganda. When it's like the beheaded babies and all of the stuff that they made up about October 7th that wasn't true, that got them to get people all hyped up on that shit. It's atrocity propaganda. It's very elevated, propagandized version of what happened. And they didn't even tell us in the US that there were like literal gunfights between people who embedded themselves with the protesters and the police. Now, if that happened here, if there were people who were literally shooting at ICE, there would be a similar situation. And again, I don't think that it was the protesters that were shooting at the cops here in Tehran. It was these armed militia groups that were paid, or not paid, but armed and given these weapons by the U.S. and Israel. So it's just something interesting about the narrative that's being built, and that has been built all this time. And now this kind of footage is finally starting to come out. And then there's this, let's see if I saved this for some reason. Oh, yeah, because of this video. I think this guy explains this New York Times article where they kind of admit that that there were people who were given guns that used this protest for cover to start a bunch of shit, and they ended up killing both cops and protesters.
So this is for all the people who've been telling me that Iran is killing tens of thousands of protesters. Listen, you're all a bunch of morons. This is a March 22nd article from the New York Times. Israel, admittedly, was trying to overthrow the Iranian government, and they were arming protesters, literally arming protesters, who were killing hundreds of police officers. So, of course, the police would fire back, and not everybody who was killed was firing at the police, but that's what Israel was aiming to do. They were aiming to blame the government for killing protesters. And the reality is, this wasn't a secret. The Israelis were admitting this shit. This is January of 2026. They were admitting they were arming the protesters. This was not a secret. For all of you who acted like you didn't know, you knew. This is from an Israeli media personality. Tonight we published in the main edition of Channel 14, foreign elements are arming the protesters in Iran with live weapons. And this is the reason for the hundreds of dead among the regime's people. Anyone is free to guess who we're talking about. Israel. It is a terrorist state. It is the purveyor of terrorism along with the US in the world. They are responsible in large part for what's happening in Sudan and the Congo. So if you want to know when anything is happening in the world, which side you should be at, who you should support, just look at which side the US or Israel are supporting and just go the other way. You're 99.9% on the right side if you do that.
He ain't wrong. So Trump has been, like I said a little bit earlier, threatening to bomb every power plant, every bridge, everything in the country. And people are asking him, like, isn't that a war crime? How is that going to help people? You know,
You've said
and we'll go through some of that.
Iranians would be mad if you stopped these attacks, but why would they want you to blow up their infrastructure, to cut off their power? Wouldn't that be punishing Iranians for the actions of the regime?
They would be willing to, and it's suffering. They would be willing to suffer that in order to have freedom. The Iranians have, and we've had numerous.
They would be willing to be bombed into the Stone Age to have their form of government changed so they can have burger.
Please keep bombing.
Now, this is where he's like having trouble admitting that he's losing, because they're like, so would you allow Iran to charge a toll for ships that want to pass through the Strait of Hormuz, which is like kind of sort of its territory, or I guess that's one of the things that's in dispute right now. And he's like, we should charge a tax because we're the winners.
Are you willing to end this conflict with Iran charging tolls for passage through the strait?
Us charging tolls?
Iran.
What about us charging tolls?
Is that something you're considering?
I'd rather do that than let them have them run. Why shouldn't we? We're the winner. We won. Okay. They are militarily defeated. The only thing they have is the psychology of, oh, we're going to drop a couple of mines in the water. All right. No, we have a concept where we'll charge tolls. Okay. I thought you meant us. Your question would have been more accurate if you said us.
He's also talking a lot of shit about South Korea as well.
Think of it. And it's not just NATO. You know who else didn't help us? South Korea didn't help us. You know who else didn't help us? Australia didn't help us. You know who else didn't
Oh, shit. You hear that, Rowdy?
help us? Japan. We've got 50,000 soldiers in Japan to protect them from North Korea. We have 45,000 soldiers in South Korea to protect us from Kim Jong-un, who I get along with very well, as you know. Do you notice he said very nice things about me? He used to call Joe Biden a mentally retarded person, okay? So don't tell me about your stuff. Joe Biden, he said he's a mentally retarded person. He was so nasty to Joe Biden. It was terrible. But to me, he likes Trump. And do you notice how nice things are with North Korea? It's very nice.
I have a, let's see, hold on. Can I get it? It is a sticker that I have on my cork board. Or on my, post board or whatever you call the things. Oh, I'm going to have to put that up later. We had a bunch of them, and we put them all over DC. And a friend of mine put a couple of them on a cop car one night outside of a club, because, it was like a bunch of people outside. And after the club closed and the cop pulled up and was like getting us to disperse and stuff, and guy was drunk and walked around to the side of the cop car and put all the Kim Jong-un stickers all over it. That shit was hilarious. So yeah, and as we're doing these war crimes, there's all these justifications for them. This is an old one, but it's popping back up, and I'm sure Israel used this a lot. They say military-aged males. Drones protected the crew members by striking Iranian military-aged males believed to be a threat who got within 3 kilometers of the airmen. A person familiar with the operation told Air and Space Forces magazine. Was that like a mile? 2 miles. Almost 1.86. Anybody that got any military age male that got within 1.86 miles of this guy got blown up. And I mean, there were a lot of civilians who were chasing that pilot down. There were traffic jams to get to the region because so many civilians were trying to trying to find this guy because there was a bounty. But I think also, like, you know, despite the issues that people had with their government, they're like unified now against the invader. Then there's this other thing that Ryan Grimm pointed out, that this guy from this think tank, FDD, is saying Sharif University of Technology is not just Iran's top engineering school. It is a talent pipeline for missile, cyber, and dual-use military programs tied to the regime and IRGC. Ryan Grimm pointed out that calling schools and universities a talent pipeline for the military is genocidal language. Which, very good point. And then there's the front in Lebanon too, where kind of in similar fashion to everywhere else, Israel is both getting its ass kicked and committing war crimes. This is them blowing up a whole village. Nakora. Totally insane. This is what it looked like before. Yeah, exactly. And that's the the problem with this is just the lack of humanity in general. But from a selfish point of view, even the things that you do to other people, they can do to you, you know? And there has been a pretty steady escalation as far as that's concerned. Like if Iran has an oil depot hit, they'll hit an oil depot, and that is how it has been going. Now, they have put forward a 10-point plan for peace that I think is actually pretty reasonable. The 10-point plan is guarantee that Iran will not be attacked again, permanent end to the war, not just a ceasefire, end to Israeli strikes in Lebanon, lifting all U.S. sanctions on Iran, end to all regional fighting against Iranian allies. I'm guessing that would include Palestine too. In return, Iran would open the Strait of Hormuz. Iran would impose a Hormuz fee of $2 million per ship. Iran would split these fees with Oman. Iran to provide rules for safe passage through Hormuz. Iran to use Hormuz fees for reconstruction instead of reparations. Now, that might appeal to Trump in a way. It depends on it depends on how far gone he is. I don't know, because that is a good deal. Because according to international law, the U.S. will owe reparations for all these civilian sites that were damaged and stuff like that. This is a way to get the world to pay for it, basically. And Trump would love that, which, you know, because it's another one of those, uses of U.S. power that he finds so attractive. I don't know. I'm interested to see where this goes. This is the response to the 15-point plan that they've put forward last week, which when we read it, I said, like, they'll probably, there's some things that they will go along with, but then there's some things that they'll definitely demand on their own, especially because they have some leverage. But yeah, I mean, the part of making the world pay for it is kind of fucked up. But I do think Trump will go for it. Would go for that part if he is looking to make peace. If he's not looking to make peace, then that is the thing, is he needs to be seen as victorious. So I think that he may put forward another Like they'll go back and forth, you know what I mean? Like this 10-point plan won't be the end of it. Trump will put forward another proposal which might include some of this stuff and then something extra. But that point 10 might be something that Trump can spin as a win because we don't have to pay for it. The world's going to pay for the cleanup. And, I could see him pulling some shit, saying some shit like that. But he is threatening to do some really scary shit.
That really worries me. I mean, I've lived in Tehran. There are two Irans. There is an Iran which is being ruled by really a fanatic, repressive, dictatorial regime which is holding the majority of the Iranian population hostage. But there is an Iran of 80, 90 million people who have extremely well developed institutions. Iran is held as one of the highest performing public health bureaucracies in the entire Middle East. It provides wonderful public health services. Now, these aren't part of the repressive apparatus, but they are hospitals, they are the training grounds for all the nurses and so on and so forth. And similarly, in terms of transportation and networks and all the other things which are the everyday life of a country. So I would have hoped to see.
Gonna skip along to some other conversations on this same thing. So this isn't. This is why I said this earlier. That guy that was mad at me, he probably tuned out. But I was saying earlier, an expert in international criminal law confirms that Donald Trump's deliberate targeting of Iranian power plants and bridges are blatant war crimes. She explicitly compares his legal actions to the exact crimes that got Russian leaders indicted by the ICC. So there is this problem where the U.S. isn't treated the same as other countries, but we kind of are entering a little bit of a different era here where the US might not have special rules, which I think would be for the betterment of the world.
It would constitute violations of international law.
Because as I will explain in the video that I'm releasing this week, none of this shit benefits us at all. Like, people have this pride of the US being the world hegemon, but it literally does not do anything for you at all. If anything, it makes the gap between the rich and the poor here worse, and it takes funding away from infrastructure and things that could actually benefit us.
And I think whether something is a crime or not a crime would have to be decided by a court. But any attack on civilian infrastructure is a violation of international law, and a very clear one.
Marieke de Groen is an associate professor of international criminal law at the University of Amsterdam. She says that U.S. attacks on civilian infrastructures and announcing them blatantly are evidence of crimes against humanity.
These attacks on civilian infrastructure and announcing them also that there will be even more of them. And indeed, those are war crimes. If you intentionally attack civilian objectives, then you cannot argue that that is lawful. And there can be an exception to that if these civilian objectives like bridges and power plants, if they really provide an effective contribution to military advantage and also would really have to offer definitive military advantage. But that is a very high threshold, and the International Criminal Court has also explained when it issued arrest warrants for exactly these types of war crimes against Russian leaders for attacking power plants in Ukraine. That
like if we just hit Russia with these kind of crimes, then there's no way that in the current geopolitical environment that that they're going to hold the U.S. to different standards now.
That's the expected civilian harm clearly exceeds the expected military advantage in such attacks. So I think.
There's also this weird thing I saw with Germany where they're not letting, well, you need approval if you're going to leave the country for extended amounts of time if you're under the age of 45 in Germany. Like what is going on? And I don't know who they'd be allied with, you know what I mean? I don't think Europe would be on our side at this point. Let's take a look at this pilot story. Because at first, I was really, really sick of hearing about this story. A daring rescue, so brave, kiss the hero's ass, all that shit. I was so sick of hearing about that. And then it kind of started getting interesting when it's like, oh, it might not have even been a rescue mission. They were trying to steal the uranium, and they positioned it as a rescue mission, and it failed miserably. And now they're trying to, cover up for that. So now this website here that I stumbled across, thirsty. This website that I stumbled across, Sonar 21, it's run by this guy. I had to do some little bit of research because it had good, it made some good points, and somebody shared it, but I was like, this is just some random shit. But apparently this guy was a former CIA officer, so, grain of salt and all, but has some credibility. Former planner and advisor of the U.S. State Department's Officer of Counterterrorism. So not just a random blog, because that was my first inclination. But oddities, he points out. Where is it? So there are some real oddities about this story. The WSO is normally a lieutenant or a captain. This WSO is a colonel who is the vice wing commander at Muwafat Satili Air Base in Jordan. This helps explain the large number of assets devoted to finding and rescuing. So this was a very high-ranking person that they were going after. A variety of press reports claim he suffered a broken leg or a broken ankle. This raises legitimate questions. How did a man with a broken leg walk 5 miles and then climb a mountain? I don't even think it was that. It was like 100 miles. Let's continue. I'm pretty sure it was longer than that. I'm not suggesting that it is an impossible task, but it does raise some questions about the accuracy of the U.S. military's account of events. Now, here's the kicker. The geolocated wreckage of the C-130s, which were apparently using a local agricultural airstrip, see photo above, just happens to be right over a mountain, about 35 kilometers, 21 miles away from the nuclear facility where Iran's near weapons grade enriched uranium is allegedly stored. Was this whole affair a botched raid by the U.S. Special Operations Forces to seize Iranian uranium? Iranian uranium, that's a good one, for the Isfahan facility? So that's the other thing. People are saying that these C-130 planes are not usually taken on these kind of rescue missions. I don't know if anybody knows a little bit better that can speak to that, but I've heard a lot of people say that in the past day. Let's see what else. I want you to reconsider some of the other accounts that are circulating. The first up is this account claims that a large-scale U.S. rescue operation for the second crew member has effectively confirmed that the first official boots on the ground inside Iran. What the U.S. presented as a straightforward combat search and rescue mission involved significant special operations forces penetrating deep into Iranian territory, resulted in heavy U.S. losses of aircraft, according to Iranian reports and open source evidence. Yeah, I do think there was probably more casualties. I mean, it seems like it. So the rescue narrative may have served as covered or coincided with a broader objective. So yeah, they could have said, all right, we need to get this guy out of here. Iran is saying that I believe that they're saying it was a failed mission to try to get the uranium, and that the U.S. blew up their own people on the way out, Hannibal Directive style. And I have a couple of those like reports and accusations I'll pull up in a couple minutes as well. Let's see. Anthony Aguilar, a retired special operations officer, has a slightly different take. He offers the following hypothesis. The rescue operation expanded to become the desired Delta Force JSOC ST-6 high-risk operation to also seize the uranium. Hence, the need for so many operators support aircraft. This was intended to be that operation. It failed. So what happened to the aircraft? I do not believe that they were stuck. I have seen MC-130Js plow through the dirt, mud, snow, gravel, etc. I doubt they were stuck. It is more likely that the aircraft took hits upon entry and also took hits and damage while on the ground at the hasty FARP, which is a I guess improvised airstrip that they tried to make at the old airfield in Isfahan, conveniently closes to where the suspected uranium may have been stored. Then there is Greg Bagwell, who is currently president UK Air and Space Force Association, said, let's see if he had a different theory. I'm not sure if I see an interesting one there. This guy is saying the whole fiasco may be a blessing in disguise. The loss of a number of key air assets and the exposure of the remote airfield within shouting distance of Isfahan may compel the U.S. commanders to cancel their planned raid to capture. Oh, well, maybe I agree with them there. While the U.S. forces like chess piece has been assembled. So that is interesting. I had a bit more on this too. Let's see. Here's some footage of the wreckage, which you may have seen. They had their news crews down there and everything, and yeah, so then the Iranians also released a Lego video, because that's how they communicate with the dumb Americans, basically, where they showed them U.S. soldiers blowing up their own planes, and these like hands that were left behind reaching up into the sky, like, you left us behind. And this is kind of a weird thing for him to say here.
The second rescue mission involved needed a bigger.
He lists out all of the aircraft that were involved and everything.
Second rescue mission involved 155 aircraft, including 4 bombers, 64 fighters, 48 refueling tankers, 13 rescue aircraft, and more. We were bringing them all over, and a lot of it was subterfuge. We wanted to have them think he was in a different location because they had a vast military force out there. Thousands of people were looking. So we wanted them to look in different areas. So we were scattered it all over like we were right on top of them. We had 7 different locations where they thought, and they were very confused. They said, well, wait a minute, they've got groups here, they've got groups there. It's an amazing thing. I was listening to these great people, these great generals. General
He really does seem like he's struggling.
Raisin Kane was amazing, and Pete Hegseth was amazing. But I listened to the whole thing; it was pretty amazing. So they had all these different sites where everybody thought.
Gonna go to the next one. So this is gross. Now, there have already been like 1,000 people killed in this thing. The first day of the war, there was a bomb dropped on a school that killed 200 kids. And with this pilot missing, this Sky News person says, this brings a human dimension to the war. Like, you gotta be kidding me, man. These people. Like, they just don't see people outside of their jurisdiction or, of a different skin shade as human beings or of a different religion or whatever. It's insane.
Why are we concentrating on one jet and one aircrew? Well, it's because tactically it's not really significant, but strategically, if Iran manages to find the aircrew first, then the danger is we go down a path which we went down in the Gulf War when Flight Lieutenant John Peters, how we had him on earlier, he was paraded propaganda, and it touched the whole world, and it suddenly brings a human dimension to the war. So at the moment, it's
human dimension to the war. Yeah, like there was a moment, I think I'm not sure if I saved it or not. I don't think it was in that clip where Trump was like, how many people did we have? And then the general was like, I don't want to talk about that. I don't want to put out that number. And he's like, yeah, all right. The number was a couple hundred. So this is kind of related to that whole human dimension. Every country has their problems and stuff, and they try to dehumanize people in other countries and make it seem like things are so much different there than they are here. But things aren't that much different all around the world. People have different cultures and slightly different beliefs, and in some places you have to look out for the cops for different things. You have to look out for the cops everywhere, but is to different degrees and different things that you need to worry about in different places. But this rant from this woman in her car was pretty awesome in response to that human element of the story.
The same day we bombed an all-girls school because I didn't even know girls went to school in Iran based on the propaganda. I was assuming they were all in burqas at home learning homemaker things. I don't know anything because I'm in America where the propaganda is thick. Turns out we missed our mark and landed on a gym. Guess who was in the gym? Little girls playing volleyball. Little girls. I didn't even know they had girls volleyball teams in Iran, but now I do. And now I know. I'm a volleyball coach. I coach little girls every year. And I find out, can you imagine if I was just coaching and they just dropped a bomb on the gym I am? What is wrong with you people that you cannot think outside of yourself? What is wrong with you that you can't see suffering and go, oh my gosh, I caused that? Those little girls did nothing to us. They were not taking your jobs. They were not harming you. They were causing you no discomfort. You didn't even know they existed. But now we've taken their lives and they're holding their book bags and these parents are mourning. And this is the same as me. They are no different than me. I would be mourning my child just like they are if they did the horrible things that we did to them. This is madness. Wake up! Anyone who...
Yeah, she right. Getting a content warning for this, but it seems like there are remnants of a body in the wreckage of one of these. So we haven't been told about that. The other thing that's very strange is why aren't they? All right, if they're in the hospital, probably I understand, but are all of them in the hospital? Why aren't they parading any of these people out in front of the cameras? Which you think that they would do with the kind of social media forward administration that we got. So this is just a couple more things I saved. I think it's all the same footage, though, all these posts. Here's some Fox coverage where they admit to at least several injuries. And apparently a couple things that undermine the narrative. Let's see what they say.
We don't know the condition of the airmen at this point. I can tell you that the injuries are likely to be serious. We know that the pilot still remains in the region getting treatment. That suggests to me that the medical condition of the pilot is such that he cannot travel onto Landstuhl yet. Must be stabilized before you can do that. So this is still a very serious situation. A number of U.S. service members were injured during the rescue mission. We knew on Friday that 2 of the military helicopters were struck by enemy fire as part of that rescue mission. And then we know more details about the A-10 Warthog that crashed on Friday. That A-10 Warthog was providing suppressive fire and flying cover for the rescue operation as they were trying to find this. They were in a race against the clock to find this second airman who had ejected from the plane and was hiding in that ridge line. But we know that A-10 Warthog crashed in Kuwait, and the pilot of that plane also had to eject and be
A lot of crashes piling up.
rescued. But he is safe as well, I'm told. And good news tonight. But I think when all is said and done and we learn the details of this rescue mission, it really will be the stuff of Hollywood.
So this I'm not too sure about. This has been disputed, but people are arguing about it, basically. So this is apparently a passport that was retrieved from the site of the wreckage. This is apparently a U.S. agent who is operating out of Tel Aviv that was a nuclear specialist. So worked for the Israeli National Defense and medical imaging companies as a medical engineer, but also had some kind of specifically she worked with Philips and other companies on radiation machines. I mean, that I got a couple of other links, including videos of when they apparently pulled the documents out. So I want to see if they're the same documents. What's this one? So according to her LinkedIn, she worked for Raphael Systems. Raphael Systems hunted an unarmed man in Jabalia and then published a video of the murder as a commercial in June last year. Wow. Passport was found at the site of the C-130 and 3 helicopter crashes, not the F-15. So that would make sense if she was there with a crew. Yeah, like, it seems like that's what everybody's saying, is that it's some kind of botched. Where is the video of the documents? Okay, here it is. Let's see if we can see the passport or whatever in this. Is that the same? They got her credit card. Apparently, she had two IDs. She had the passport, and then she had an ID. They were holding up the ID in the video, which I've seen in a separate thing, and it did have the same name on it. I think there's a little bit more in this thread. Let's see. Guess that's them just going through the wreckage. No. But I mean, they were holding up. This is a map showing how far the pilot apparently walked. See, this is where I saw the 110 miles. This was tracked on here. Not including added mileage for caverns and mountains. And this was with a broken leg or whatever? And these geolocator people, they found this place immediately. It seems like the New York Times is going to have to retract this in particular as well. About, they claimed that the U.S. airman was helped by locals. This person asked Julian Barnes, who co-author of the report, what evidence there was for this. His response was, oh, Iranians didn't assist the airmen. This was speculation from our Iran experts. The article never clarifies that this was pure speculation. New York Times. Meanwhile, the locals were actually shooting at the airplanes. This is from Iranian TV. I'll read the subtitles that this guy says. Let's see. The IRGC, the Brazil, and law enforcement, God bless them as well. In the images we saw today of the wreckage of the American helicopters and aircraft, one image caught our attention in particular, this one here. Minutes ago, the IRGC provided this image to the news agency. This is the wreckage, the body of one of the aircraft. We cannot currently identify which specific aircraft, but clearly this is the body of one of the American technical crew or flight personnel. And here, one of the helicopter rotor blades, you can clearly see shrapnel marks. Most likely, this helicopter was damaged by Iranian air defense systems, either making an emergency landing or it was struck down. These are shrapnel marks from Iranian air defense systems, and based on the same Hannibal protocol that the Americans and the Zionist regimes follow, to prevent their personnel and crew from falling into the hands of the Islamic Republic's armed forces, they have completely bombed and eliminated them. So this body that is in this aircraft, the IRGC is saying that these people were bombed by the US. Now, I would feel like they would proudly take credit if they were the ones that did it. Unless they're playing a propaganda game, which is always possible. But I that's not what I would lean towards. Oh, wait. I forgot I was reading. They may have completely bombed and eliminated them. This is body of one of the Americans. Clearly inside one of the aircraft. Here you can see the center console of the aircraft and the control display panel of the helicopter. It's interesting how much more in depth they get into it than our media does. But let's see. I think there was something else. Oh yeah. So look at this. So this Lego, they put out another Lego thing, and they it's like multiple things a day now, but this one in particular was interesting. I'm gonna clip ahead here to the. See, this is like showing all of the traffic jams to get all the people looking, right? But this shows the Hannibal directive theory playing out. So this is them shooting down the planes, right? And they're knocking all these things out. So now they're on the ground, right? And these guys are like, help me. But people are coming. So they put the bombs on their own shit. Like, these are US soldiers here putting bombs on their aircraft. And they got one way to get out. Or like one airplane to get out. And leaving all these guys behind with their US patches on, and they got the skull patches. I didn't notice that last time. And then so like this is what they're saying has happened. And we did find that there was a lot of this that Israel has done with October 7th. Like, a lot of the casualties were them bombing the cars that were leaving that festival and stuff like that, and bombing the kibbutzes in the Gaza envelope. See what else we got here. Not sure if this. Okay, yeah, this is the same video we watched, I think. Yeah. So this is where I think this is General Kane admits that average citizens were shooting on all these aircraft, and the crew took injuries.
After picking up Dude 44 Alpha, the HH-60 Jolly Green fight was engaged by every single person in Iran who had a small arms weapon. And one of the aircraft, the trailing aircraft, took several hits. The crew sustained minor injury, and they are going to be fine.
So they put this guy on Iranian television. This is apparently the guy who brought one of the Black Hawk helicopters down. He says American planes and helicopters came into our land and governor gave us the green light to fire. And these fighter jets make weird sound whenever they come to hit Tehran or Isfahan. Or whenever there's always this sound, we see them sometimes and sometimes not. We usually hear the sound really close. We came outside and I saw 2 helicopters come from that village. The jets came in really low, even lower than the helicopters. They were banking up like this, going up. I loaded my gun. One of them was higher than the jets. When one of them came a bit lower, I fired 2 shots at it. Then I saw one of them coming really low. I did nothing until the next one. Then we fired toward the window. Right there, you could see the pilot. I shot twice at the cockpit and twice at the cargo so it would blow up. I fired 4 shots at the other one too. I actually told my family to stay inside. I'll get some distance from the house so that only I targeted if they hit me, I had to shoot them. So yeah, he didn't want his daughters getting in the way. I'll get some distance from the house so that only I get targeted if they hit me. Okay. I swear, I told the kids not to come. After I fired a few shots, I saw her yelling, "Dad, shoot." She was shouting, "Shoot it, Dad. It didn't come down. Shoot." Were you shouting, "Shoot, Dad, shoot it down"? Yeah. Why? For the little martyr girls of Minab, for our dear leader. To destroy the enemies, America and Israel. Have you watched the news recently? Yeah. And why do you think it's that the enemy should be shot at? Because they're child killers. That's fair. I mean, that's wild. See, and with any country in times of war, I'm like, is this propaganda? Is this a propaganda event? I believe this dude. And also because of the fact that this was kind of in the middle of nowhere, from what I understand, and a lot of people were descending on the area. They were crowdsourcing an army for this. So it makes sense that it would be some random dude. So, so yeah, I found it quite interesting to look at those, those kind of local coverages. Trump was mad that the report came out about there being another person missing. Now, I have kind of a theory for why he was so mad about it, but well, according to Seth Karp anyway, is that if somebody goes missing in combat and the media doesn't find out about it, you could just say fuck them and leave them. But if the media finds out, then you got to go and make a spectacle of rescuing them. So Trump was very mad about this, and he threatened whoever leaked this should be in prison. And if the journalist who reported on it did not give up the source, then they would be arrested too. And it turns out that it was some the source was somebody in Israel that was very close to Netanyahu.
We didn't talk about the first one for an hour, and then somebody leaked something, which we'll hopefully find that leaker. We're looking very hard to find that leaker, and talked about there's somebody missing. They basically said that we have one and there's somebody missing. Well, they didn't know there was somebody missing until this leaker gave the information. So whoever it was, we think we'll be able to find it out, because we're going to go to the media company that released it, and we're going to say, national security, give it up or go to jail. And we know who, and you know who we're talking about. There's some things you can't do, because when they did that, all of a sudden, the entire country of Iran knew that there was a pilot that was somewhere on their land that was fighting for his life. And it also made it much more difficult for the pilots and for the people going in to search for him. All of a sudden, they know that there's somebody out there. They see all these planes coming in. It became a much more difficult operation because a leaker leaked that we have one, we've rescued one, but there's another one out there that we're trying to get. So actually,
a leaker.
The country, Iran, put out a major notice, you all saw it, offering a very big award for anybody that captures the pilot. So in addition to a hostile, very talented, very good, very evil military.
Very talented, very good, very evil military.
We had millions of people trying to get an award. So when you add that to it, but we have to find that leaker because that's a sick person. Probably didn't realize the extent of how bad it was. I can't imagine that the person did, but we're going to find out. It's national security, and the person that did the story will go to jail if he doesn't say, and that doesn't last long. And I think everybody would understand it. They put this mission at great risk.
Yeah,
they put that man.
The first to report on the missing second pilot appeared to have been Amat Segal and Ariel Kahana. Both are Israeli reporters who are extremely close to Netanyahu. So those threats aren't going anywhere. Do have something, a little bit of a possible ray of hope here, where a U.S. general here is saying that military commanders are actively preparing to defy Donald Trump. They are bound by the Constitution to disobey unlawful orders to bomb Iranian civilians. So the U.S. has bombed civilians many times before, but it's always been like under the pretense of actually we're not really, we're doing it to free them. But because of how blatant he is being about dropping all pretense of, woke rules of engagement, then people feel icky about that. One of the things about war these days is you have to kind of convince people that like they're not going to just kill people for, the ruling class. And now that the quiet part is said out loud, people are really not feeling good about it.
Is something you said a minute ago, because I've trained for 40 years as a soldier and as a commander. And when you're an officer in the United States Army, you're loyal to a couple of things. You're primarily loyal to the Constitution. You are also loyal to your superiors if they give, as you said, lawful orders. When they start giving unlawful orders, you find a way to push back on them and to make sure they adjust their approach. But you also are loyal to the soldiers that are under your command. So those three loyalties sometimes are conflicting. So I'm sure there's a lot of military commanders right now, a lot of senior officers who are saying to themselves, I can't obey an unlawful order. I can't do things that I know are absolutely wrong. But they also feel like they have to provide support for their soldiers who don't just get to quit. They have to stay in the military and potentially see an uprising in all of these things.
So that would be interesting. That would be an interesting development if we do see some resistance. I've been seeing an increase in conscientious objectors and, people who are not willing to go along with this, who have signed up. Ultimately, that's one of the things that can push things in the right direction. Although there's always somebody that's willing to do it for a price. It doesn't look good when you have a military revolt and when you have people who are not enthusiastic about the battle that they're fighting. Because a big part of war is kind of the information propaganda level of it. And this is why so much effort is always put into making you appear like you're the winner and making you appear like you're both weak and strong at all times. So, you want to appear like, oh, I'm just some guy, I'm just some country. Uh, so you can get away with all these war crimes. Oh, little old me. And then you want people big and powerful, so the other side backs down and gives you what you want. But I don't know. I feel like we might be entering a new era where there is a lot more power in the defender, I think, of like whoever is on defense, if they're playing it right, There is also, I mean, with Iran, there are territorial situations that don't exist anywhere else, like with that whole mountainous border that they have and the Strait of Hormuz, which they can easily control. Like, if you're talking about like a spawn point on a map in like a civilization game or something like that, it is quite an interesting spawn point for sure. Yeah, and like I said, I do have a video coming out about how I actually think it will be a good thing for the US if we lose this war, because we don't benefit from the empire and all this money is spent on it. And this crisis is very similar to the Suez crisis, which happened right after World War II. And the Suez Canal, they were fighting over control of it. Egypt nationalized it, and they didn't like the France and the UK did not like that. I think they were just known as Britain at the time. So they teamed up with Israel, invaded Egypt to take control of it. But then the US, which was kind of, I guess, on a high horse after World War II and actually aligning with civil rights in that case, said that Britain and France didn't have the right to do that. I also think it was because they were probably trying to control Europe and keep Europe in check to some extent with, that was around the time of the Marshall Plan and all that, which was pretty predatory. But yeah, so with the Suez crisis, it ended up being to the point where the UK and France had to back down. And that was like the end of their empire era. You know what I mean? And after that time, the quality of life did not diminish for people that lived in France or Britain. It actually increased. There was a lot more investment into public services and stuff like that. And people's lives got better. They weren't being shipped off to wars either to colonize places. And if I'm not mistaken, I think their standing is a lot better globally than they used to be. I mean, France and Britain used to be the evil empires. Now it's the US. So I think that this expansionary shit is not good. It doesn't help anybody, and all these excuses are nonsense because there's no government on earth is there's no free country on earth. All governments are oppressive to different degrees and different shades, but they're all oppressive. So especially the US. So the US does not have a moral high ground to stand on, which is why like I'll always get accused of like simping for these countries that have governments that I wouldn't like if I lived there. And it's like, well, I'm just saying that we don't have the right to change their form of government, and we don't have a moral high ground, and we aren't a separate species, a superior species of people or something like that can that's not how the world should operate, and it's kind of fucked up to think that way. But you always get accused of sympathy for the enemy and all that. And that's that classic Nazi quote from that Nazi guy who was like, to convince people to go to war, all you have to do is convince them that they're in danger, convince them that they're being attacked, and then, you know, whatever that last part was that I said. um, but yeah, exactly. Ethnocentrism. Yeah, exactly. That mindset. It's very unfortunate, and it sucks. And I thought that we were going to move past that with the internet. Like when I was young and naive in the early days, I was like, the world is going to be connected now. We're all going to see how foolish this war thing is. And now, no, we're actually running into World War III or IV, as I would call it, maybe V by now, actually. It's really just been one long string of a world war since World War I. It hasn't stopped, really, if you think about it, because there's been all of this colonization that happens in between. We're really just taught World War I and World War II in that time framed way. Specifically, so we look at history a specific way, where you know, the US are always the victors, when really the US funded the Nazis very early on, like IG Farben and Prescott Bush, George Bush's grandfather, with all of his companies, and Bayer, I think, too. And they got a lot of their ideas from the way that people in the US, the ruling class in the US, were treating Native Americans and the slaves with the slavery situation. You know, it was, people think that the United States is like on this such a moral high ground when, like, there was slavery here more recently than almost anywhere else that we're accusing of, you know. I don't believe there's any slavery in Iran. There is certainly in Dubai. And again, like, not to say that any of these places are perfect. Governments are fucked up. And it's just like, shouldn't have the right to do that shit. And hopefully that's coming to an end, you know? We are a troubled society. America, like, it is a very troubled society. I live here. I don't fit in here. I never have. There's something to do with neurodivergence, but it also has to do with, like, this place is fucked. You know. There are certainly things I like about it. Like, I mean, but, you know. Yeah, I know. It is shocking. It is shocking. Yeah, they have found different bullshit excuses to enslave people over the years. Most recently as race, but yes, many times religion as well, and a lot of times like war, even. I do think that the system of slavery that we had in the U.S. here was probably like more brutal than what was happening in Rome and stuff, for example. Even though that was much longer ago. And I mean, that was very, very recently too. Just a couple people ago, you know? But yeah, I look forward to putting out some more of those videos this week. Now that I'm doing like this kind of weekends off thing, I'm gonna be able to put out a lot more stuff. So I'm excited about that. I got a lot of cool ideas. Problem with neurodivergence is that feels even crazier to us and completely unacceptable. Regular job. Yeah. I always struggle with that kind of stuff. Um, especially when for most of your life you don't know why you're weird and stuff. Like especially for people who like grew up in the 90s and 80s and stuff. Um, it's uh you know, back then they didn't know about any of that shit. Now they do. Now that if like I was growing up today, they would be like, yeah, that kid's autistic. But back then they didn't know shit. And it would have been better to know sooner for sure. Like it would have helped with like figuring out my eating issues and stuff like that. And it would have made me feel a little bit more sane because my whole life I was just like, why am I so weird and different? What the hell, you know? And then it eventually made sense once I figured that out. But yeah, one thing I wanted to mention, my new book is coming out soon. The sequel to Paper Squares and Purple Stars, My Life as a Rave Outlaw. It is a standalone sequel, so you don't need to read the first one. But this is more focused on my time in activism. It is called Echo Chambers and Engagement Farmers, Diaries of a Digital Propagandist. Or is it it's Echo Chambers and Engagement Farmers, Diaries of a Digital Propagandist. And I am looking for test readers to give me some feedback on the book as I'm editing it. So the whole thing is pretty much written, but I just got to edit it. And I am looking for some feedback. So if you are curious to read it and you don't mind reading things in a document or PDF or whatever, join the Discord and just pop into the general chat or anywhere and just say that you would be interested in reading. Yeah, I know. I don't, you'd be interested in reading the book, and I will add you to the channel where I have the document posted. So, definitely curious to hear what people think, because it is a little bit, I'm telling a couple different stories at once, but it's like a memoir. And it at that time in my life, I was both making a comeback, trying to throw raves again after a dramatic exit, and with the club getting busted and the corporate competitors kind of putting me out of business. I tried to make a comeback during that time, but I was also doing all this alternative media stuff, writing articles, hosting conferences, traveling to conferences, like around the Occupy Wall Street time. And it was involved with that. So yeah, it covers that whole time. And it also covers my battle with cancer, where I tried to fight with the doctors and then ended up almost dying, and then having to swallow my pride and do the chemo and all that. And yeah, so yeah, I know it's tough. Like the scene turned into something totally different. The industry turned into something totally different. I'm sure there's pockets still of like what I fell in love with about that scene, but it seems like it would be not, you know, I don't think I would have been able to survive regardless, because I was doing something entirely different than what ended up catching on. And I probably wouldn't have even enjoyed it if I did become successful, because I would be doing dubstep parties and shit, and I wouldn't be having that much fun. But yeah, I may do like one-off stuff someday. Like I did a release party for my book, and a while back somebody asked me to like be involved in a show that they might be doing at some point, and I was like, yeah, I might help. But you know, I nothing anytime soon. I don't even know who I'd book at this point, because I would want to book a bunch of trance and happy hardcore and stuff, and that's not really what people are going for these days. Yeah, I remember you were involved with a lot of parties in Philly and Allentown and stuff back in the day, right? Yeah. Yeah, I remember those parties. Yeah, I think the music scene in my city is probably hopping again, but it's probably like young kids that I'm not connected with, that are probably doing cool underground stuff. I hope anyway. I hope that's how it's going. That there's at least some people keeping it alive. Um, but yeah, that's all I got for tonight. I'm gonna try now that I'm not doing it every single night, that I'm going like maybe 4 or 5, maybe 6 nights a week. Uh, Usually between 4 and 6. I'm gonna try to keep these closer to 2 hours now, because I think that's a better format. Give myself some nights off, but actually stay for a longer, more complete stream. But yeah, peace, y'all. I'll catch you tomorrow. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and check out my other videos. And if you have the ability and want to contribute, take a look at my Patreon, where you can find a subscription to my books and a bunch of other cool stuff, like the ability to send links in chat and access to closed rooms in our Discord server.